Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlickers, shills, Nestle, search peasants, vassals, meat sacks, hedge fund managers. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome. And let's go to the USA, or actually global. So we're going to talk about hackers and international traders. And hat tip to a longtime viewer and friend, Apagugu, who gave me this story a little while ago. And I've looked into it a little more, and I agree with him that the implications are pretty staggering. And the fact that this story hasn't gotten more legs is part of the story in itself, because as you'll see when you see the details of the story, the tip of the iceberg, I think, is what we're seeing. And I think that was what Apagugu's point was. And the basic gist of this is that the new model for insider trading is going to be hacking, and there'll be no surprise there. And it's near impossible to protect against, in spite of huge investments by all these companies for cybersecurity, because the hackers are always going to be 5 or 10 years ahead of the systems that the corporations end up using. So anyway, let's look at these two stories that are involved in this. One is from August 2015, and it's a group of U.S. traders hired hackers in Russia and Ukraine to go into newswire services and take out non-public information before it's released, and then trade on that. And there's been a history of this, and apparently this one group, it goes back over 5 years. It involves $100 million. And so that gives me an idea that, well, this is pretty interesting. This has been going on for 5 years. They finally bust these guys, and it involves $100 million. And this is just one group. This is the first prosecution for this sort of crime. And it makes me want to extrapolate, well, if this has been going on for 5 years and this is just one group and that's $100 million, how many other groups are out there doing this? And that's why I say it's the tip of the iceberg. I can't imagine if there's one group doing this, is there going to be 5 more groups doing it, 10 more groups doing it, 20, 50, 100? Pretty soon we're starting to talk about some real money. And then if you just talk about the hackers and the traders, that's one thing. But suppose we have Chinese hackers involved. Suppose we have hackers from any number of other places in the world. Suppose we have hedge funds. Since bankers and hedge funds and the criminal elements are all interchangeable, they all use the same method. So how many banks and how many hedge funds are also getting involved in this new form of insider trading using hacking? And in fact, people involved in those circles say that they've been operating like this for years, and that it's, quote, happening all over the place, unquote. So that seems to confirm that this is happening on a large scale, and this is the insider trading in the future. Like I said earlier, it's near impossible to protect against, and apparently this group alone was able to operate for 5 years before being prosecuted. So that says that it's pretty effective, and apparently a great way to do insider trading, because the odds of being caught are a lot less than they would be operating in other ways. But the other story involved in this is companies that were hacked recently for customer information that was also used undoubtedly for some sort of sell-off in insider trading, and that's customer info from J.P. Morgan Chase, Dow Jones, Fidelity Investments, and E-Trade. So once again, everyone is well aware of the fact that governments are trying to hack each other all the time. But corporations, as everyone knows, are also indulging in the same thing. And now we have independent rogue elements out there, possibly banking elements, hedge fund elements, foreign government elements, all involved in trying to hack into banks and get into this financial jackpot out there, because of the fact that everything's done on the internet. So it's, along with the fact that we have high frequency trading and all sorts of other odd ways that you can front run and essentially do legal insider trading, or using algorithms. This whole era of the internet and science essentially being brought to bear in the financial markets is a pretty interesting development of our time, and has lots of pitfalls. I've always wondered how much protection can we get to contain our entire grid of running a modern society in this electronic grid that, of course, the militaries have already developed technology to bring it down. So it just seems precarious at times. And a good example of that is the way that, of course, in the cyber universe, we're going to have pirates out there who are going to find easy ways to plunder hundreds of millions of dollars, just like magic, in this great universe of wealth out there that's on the internet. And so anyway, hats off once again to Hopagugu for this story. So it turns out there's 9 guys that were prosecuted, traders, and then 17 hackers and 15 different firms. But this is the first prosecution, and so once again, if it's been going on for 5 or 10 years, this is the first prosecution, and how much of this is out there, and it can only grow and scale as well. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.